everything you need to know about products and services that can improve your life. This is Experts on Call on CL 650.
And welcome back to the show, Strata Life. We're speaking with our experts here. Drew Grout is the Director of Strata Services at Key Pacific Property Management, helping Stratas deal with all of their issues. We have Jennifer Neville here, lawyer at Hammerberg Lawyers. We're going to talk to you in a moment about dealing with Stratas and when you need to get a lawyer involved. And Eric Lordson is here, Senior Project Manager of Applied Coatings and Restoration. Now, Eric, in your segment, we talked about the parkade, and you deal with the membrane to protect the concrete from degradation and failing eventually. So what's your overall message to somebody that's living in a strata that maybe has, first of all, give us the telltale signs that there's an issue with your parking lot.
Well, what I would offer is that take a moment to go down and just look for things that don't look normal. Mm-hmm. I mean, you want to just give it an inspection. And it's actually quite easy because most of the serious damage to an existing membrane happens, common sense, is towards the entranceway where the most traffic is. As you get further down in the parkade, it gets less traffic, so it has less wear, and it's probably in better condition.
Like your carpet, right? The carpet at the front door has more wear.
Under the bed, it's real good. So. Anyway, I just, good advice. It's a very expensive proposition to repair if it's not done on the protection side. So what I would offer is take a moment as a group, bring in a consultant. There's engineering firms that can do this as well too. Contractors like myself, there's a few of us in town that can do this work as well too. And just get good advice and take a look at it and talk amongst the strata members and try to come to a decision as to what you want to do. In most cases, if they don't need it done, we don't do it right away. Mm-hmm. But at some point down the road, it's going to be required. So it's a simple matter of pay me now or pay me later.
So with regular scheduled maintenance, we hear about that with a car.
Yes.
You need to get the brakes checked every once in a while. Do you have a program with the Stratas that are maybe 10 years old now? Say, let's get in there every once in a while.
We offer recommendations with every service that we offer. We give them typically a manual on maintenance once we're complete that. But a rule of thumb is, every 6 months, bring in a company that can do the sweeping and the maintenance and the pressure washing of the parkade. You want to get that gravel and all the grit and debris off the ground because
it wears it out, right?
Absolutely. When you get tires driving across it, it acts like sandpaper. Let's not wear it out any faster than we have to. Keep it clean and maintained, and it's going to serve you for a long time.
Now, Drew, is this a bit of resistance on the part of some stratas that they don't want to spend regular maintenance on the parking lot? Because that's really kind of a forgotten part of the building?
I think if you're talking about the maintenance in terms of cleaning, that sort of thing, I don't think that it's any different than any other basic maintenance throughout the strata. They'll factor that in. They'll do it when they have to do it. It's the larger problems, dealing with the leaks. Once things start to show themselves, they realize that it's not going to be a quick fix. Sometimes they look at the quick fix injections. Not to say that injections don't work, but sometimes they don't. But that's often the first step, and it's a lot less expensive than what Eric's talking about.
So, Eric, back to you. When you come into a building and you see a leak in a ceiling, for example, and it's dripping on a car or on the floor, you would then get somebody else in to say, as you brought up earlier, Drew, where's it coming from? Like, you can fix the problem, but the water's still getting in from somewhere, right?
Yeah.
So you've got to work backwards.
Well, you do. And if it's on a parkade deck where you can actually walk above the existing leaking section, you can pretty much come to a conclusion very quickly. The tricky ones are on exterior walls because what you really like to do is a positive side repair on the outside of the building where you can actually affect the water coming into the building. But if we're down 3 stories in a parkade, digging that all out on the outside with the soils and everything and trees, that's just not on. But as Drew was mentioning a minute ago, there are procedures called injection where you can actually inject liquids into the material or into the crack. It expands, it dries, and it stops the water from coming back into the parkade. So there's different repair techniques that you can utilize throughout the entire parkade.
I saw a building where they had the whole beautiful grounds pulled right off. Yep. And I guess they were revealing I guess moisture gets in there, tree roots, whatever, go in there too, right?
That's a building design in Vancouver. A lot of times you'll see especially the old 3-story walk-ups. Where
That's what it was. It was like a 60s or 70s building.
That's exactly. And it's called a podium slab. And what that means is there's a parkade underneath it, but they extend the parkade out beyond the actual frame of the building. Mm-hmm. But now they have soils in there. But of course, we've got trees that are growing for 40 years in Vancouver.
Well, it's like anybody's have a sewer drain. You get tree roots into the sewer. You have to auger it out or fix it, right?
Plays havoc with the membrane. The roots get in there, bust it all up. Now you've got water that makes its way into the parkade. So it involves ripping all those soils out, all those trees out. It's a very expensive process, very disruptive.
All right, now we're going to switch back to the strata, and we talked about the P's. I'm going to try and remember them. People, pets, parking, and where was the other one? Pools, that's right. We haven't really talked about pools. And this is where we're going to bring in Jennifer as well as our lawyer expert on this. So what's your overall advice to stratas that get into a situation where there's conflict? So Drew, we've talked about this before. You kind of go in there once in a while and play referee, and you give advice to strata councils based on what you experience you've had in other strata units, other buildings. So kind of talk about what you advise people.
When we're dealing with something like that, and it could be, the noise issues, whatever, it may get to the point where the questions being asked are really legal questions. Mm-hmm. And at that point, we will often suggest that the Strata Council obtain an opinion from someone like Jennifer to give some guidance as to what should be considered in a matter like that. And I think you get involved with a lot of stratas through that type of process, right?
Now, is Hammerberg law, is it a unique boutique that you have inside your law firm that deals with this? Are there many law firms that deal with strata counselors, or have you kind of carved out a specialty there?
Certainly it is a specialty, but there are other lawyers in town that have strata specialty as well. And I think with respect to the conflict issue, what we would generally say to people is sort of understand what your obligations are. And so strata councils and owners need to know what the strata plan says and what the Strata Property Act says. And if they don't, then I think that's the time that we can get involved and hopefully help negotiate and navigate that conflict to a resolution.
I need you to take your lawyer hat off for a moment and put on your layperson hat. Are the strata rules?
Love your hat.
The strata bylaws, are they easy for the layperson to understand? Like you say, I'm going to get the bylaws of this building. As somebody who's a layperson, can they really understand what they're reading, or do you look at it both ways?
Yeah, well, when we draft bylaws, we try to put them in plain and simple language so that people understand and know what their obligations are. Because otherwise, what's the point? Mm-hmm. I would say the Strata Property Act is not as reader friendly that way.
And so, what misconceptions could people have looking at it as a lawyer versus a layperson? Are there any examples where they read it wrong? Can you think of that?
Sure. I think that there's a lot of case law with respect to strata matters as well, interpreting various aspects of the Strata Property Act. So there could be case law out there which is different than the interpretation that a person has. And generally speaking, a lawyer can help determine that.
And how have you seen the Strata Act change over years? Drew, you mentioned this before. When a new strata is formed, the Strata Act basically is the template for what that building is going to be using, right?
It's a section of the Act which deals with standard bylaws.
Standard bylaws.
In the absence of bylaws, that's their bylaws.
And that's the template basically from which most
a lot of stratas.
So has it changed over the years?
Yeah, for sure. There's been a fair bit of pressure on the BC government over the years to respond to various issues. And an example would be that a number of years ago, the legislation was changed so that if a strata corporation didn't approve a special levy for a repair that was necessary, it can now go to Supreme Court for an order for a repair. So that's an example of some of the changes that have been made over the years.
Can you give me an example of that? What would that mean?
So in a scenario, let's say, for example, I had a building in Richmond a number of years ago that really needed some repairs, and it was a building envelope issue. And unfortunately, they just couldn't get the owners together for the 3/4 vote in order to approve it and pay for it and raise the money for it. So one of the threats that owners have to face is that if you get over 50% voting in favor of it, you can take it to Supreme Court of BC and get an order to impose that special levy. And that is surprising to owners and also a hardship. So it's better to choose how it's repaired rather than waiting for the court to tell you how it's going to be repaired.
I guess it's also the government is there to help you from yourselves, right?
Yes.
If there's a majority of people, 50+1, that want this fixed, then it should be fixed. I guess that threshold needs to be lowered in special circumstances. So, Drew, you deal with, you're really on the front lines. You're the guy that people call when they have a situation in the building. What is you're a very calm person. I have known that because you've been on the show many times.
Fooled you.
But is it pretty basic advice? Just bring the temperature down and let's just talk this through.
Well, yeah, it's people need to take a breath, step back, take a breath, and realize there's going to be different opinions as to how anything should be dealt with. And our role is to not tell them what to do necessarily, but present options as we can, and give them the information they need to make a sound decision. And if there's some questions on the legal side, then we can go in that direction to get them answered, and come back and consider that in the whole scheme of things. But there's always a solution. Mm-hmm. The thing is, when you're dealing with a lot of people, you get a lot of different reasons as to why they may or may not want to proceed that way.
And I guess on the legal side, you're giving options as well. Here are your 2 or 3 options. Decide what you want, right?
Yes, and I may say I don't recommend that option because this will happen, and I do recommend this because this will happen. But yes, there's always an option.
You always say, here are the red flags, right?
Yes.
All right. So that's good advice. And, is it the last resort to get the lawyers involved?
Not always. Not always.
I would say not.
No?
It
is. Sometimes it's better to get you in early to get a legal opinion?
Yeah. Well, especially if the council's going down a road which is maybe not consistent with the legislation, it's better to know early you shouldn't be doing that than, a year later find out that you went in a wrong direction. That's the voice of Jennifer Neville, lawyer at Hammerberg Lawyers. I didn't say Hammerberger, except at the beginning.
You just said it.
I know, it's just as a joke. Eric Lauritsen is the Senior Project Manager, Applied Coatings and Restorations. Thanks for being on the show. Great information.
Thank you.
And of course, Drew Grout, our regular here, Director of Strata Services at Key Pacific Property Management. Thank you all for being on the show. I learn something every single time I host this. Thank you very much for being here for Strata Life. I'm Zach Spencer, and you're listening to CL 650.